Hello, LAPCS scholars. Mr. Raleigh here. We're going to talk about the presidencies of Jefferson and Madison between 1800 and 1812. So make sure you have your Cornell Notes template out or a notebook to do them. And let's get started. Okay, so the election of 1800 was a turning point in U.S. history. The Revolution of 1800, as they called it, marked the first time in U.S. history that one political party transferred power to another. So if you look at this little chart here, you see the differences between John Adams, who was a Federalist, and Thomas Jefferson from the Democratic Republicans. That's right. They used to be one thing. Democrats and Republicans were in one thing, in one political party. Blows your mind, right? Okay, so it was a pretty close one, 53% to 47%. We're all Republicans. We're all Federalists, Jefferson said in his inauguration. Nope, that's my dog barking. Okay, Jefferson's presidency marked nearly 30 years of dominance by Democratic Republicans. If you look at this chart, you'll see that eventually it changes from Democratic Republican Party to Democratic Party. Eventually, there will be a Republican Party not too far after this time period. Okay, if this image captures Jefferson's vision of an ideal America, what is his vision? What role did Jefferson want the government to play in this ideal America? Just take a look. Look around. What do you see in this painting? Like, seriously, take a look. Jefferson wanted to reverse the Federalist policies by reducing the size and cost of the national government. So when you're doing your exit ticket after this, pay close attention to what I'm about to say. Jefferson believed that the government had grown too large and too powerful. He cut the size of the army. He eliminated taxes on whiskey, slaves, and property. He allowed the charter of the Bank of America, or the U.S., to expire. Now, that means that there was no more national bank. That's what that means. He focused on paying down debt from the federal government. So those were the things that he did that were different from Federalists. So think about that when you're doing your exit ticket. So Jefferson believed that America should be an agrarian republic. If you look at this, what does that mean? What do you think agrarian means? I'm not going to tell you because you should be able to figure that out from looking at the picture. That protects liberty as well. The Federalists didn't want their policies destroyed by Jefferson and Democratic Republicans. Federalists favored a strong central government. Republicans didn't. They wanted more state and individual rights. Federalists had a broad interpretation of the Constitution, which means that the Constitution can encompass all kinds of things that aren't stated in it. Republicans favored a strict interpretation, so only the words in the Constitution should be followed. The Federalists also believed in commercialism, industrialism, financial groups, and a U.S. bank, a national bank, while Republicans favored state banks, agrarian policies for economics, and that sort of thing, okay? In the months before leaving office, President Adams appointed numerous Federalists to become judges in federal courts. This was known as the Midnight Judges, because he did it right at the end of his at the end of his term in office when he was about to not become president anymore. Jefferson opposed these appointments, so when he became president, he ordered his Secretary of State, James Madison, to deny some of these judge appointments. So they were appointed the judges, and then the President Jefferson said, no, we're not going to let you do that. Okay. One of these potential judges was William Marbury, who sued Madison when he was deprived or kept from his position. Marbury versus Madison of 1803 is one of the most important Supreme Court cases in U.S. history, and I will explain why. Okay. Marbury is saying, hey, Congress created the Judiciary Act to create lower courts with judges, so the president should be able to appoint them. Jefferson and Madison say, yes, but the president can only appoint and not deny whoever he wants. So who wins here? So basically, Marbury versus Madison case established the principle of judicial review, giving the Supreme Court the power to declare acts of Congress unconstitutional. So the important thing here is to understand that the Supreme Court job is finally established, and that is that it decides whether or not something is constitutional or not. If it's constitutional or not. And the courts ruled against Marbury. In other words, they felt that Jefferson had every right to deny that person the position. So you can look over here, look at this little cartoon because it kind of explains or gives you some ideas of what was on the two sides. Chief Justice John Marshall served as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1801 to 1835. Over 3 decades, Marshall's rulings helped strengthen the power of the national government over the states and protected the rights of citizens. And it's interesting because you would think that a stronger national government would be taking away people's individual rights, but in a lot of cases that didn't happen. So here is a list of really important cases, but first one was Marbury versus Madison. We will talk about the others as we get to them. During Jefferson's presidency, the U.S. population was growing and people were moving west. From 1800 to 1810, the U.S. grew by 2 million people. Kentucky became a state in 1792, and then Tennessee was added in 1796, Ohio in 1803. Jefferson was worried about French control of New Orleans and the Mississippi River. So that was a major issue. So, and if you look here, there's the Mississippi River, it goes all the way down here, and New Orleans is down here. So Jefferson sent a delegation to France to negotiate the purchase of New Orleans. Napoleon wanted to sell all French territories in America to fund his war. He was fighting France. Let me restate that. France was fighting the English and many others. So Napoleon was the Emperor of France, and he was fighting a war with the British and a whole bunch of other countries in Europe, as you can see by looking at this, as they formed this huge alliance. In 1803, Congress approved the purchase of Louisiana from the French for $15 million. Keep in mind, it's not just this state of Louisiana, which would be down in here. It's this entire territory. It was a third of the size of the current United States. The Louisiana purchase doubled the size of the United States at that time period. Over here was still Spain. It was near Spain and other territories. Then now the United States is all of this. Americans were excited about gaining a new Western lands, but the Louisiana Purchase presented some problems. Was the purchase constitutional? Despite his belief in strict interpretation, Jefferson used the elastic clause to buy it. We talked about the elastic clause, elastic stretches. So in other words, the clause is that the president can sort of stretch what the Constitution says for his implied powers to do things like purchase land. What about the French and Spaniards in New Orleans? Despite his belief in protecting liberty, Jefferson did not grant foreigners citizenship. What did the U.S. buy? No one knew what kind of resources existed in the Louisiana Territory. So Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the Louisiana Territory. So they went actually much farther than that. They started here in St. Louis and went all the way over to the Pacific Ocean. And what did they find? Well, they found that there was an abundance of natural resources for America. And to this day, the United States is lucky to have a lot of natural resources. Jefferson was widely popular and easily won the election of 1804. This number here, 92%, that's crazy. It's inconceivable nowadays. But he won handily. But his second term was plagued by foreign policy problems. The war between England and France led to more attacks on U.S. trade ships. So the United States trade ships were taking materials to sell over in France and England. And when they were doing that, The British Navy would impress more than 1,000 American sailors per year from 1803 to 1807. We'll talk about impressment tomorrow more when we talk about the War of 1812, but it basically meant that American sailors were being taken captive and forced to work in the Imperial English Navy, British Navy. Jefferson was frustrated with his inability to get England or France to stop attacking U.S. ships. In 1807, he ordered an embargo and banned all U.S. trade with England and France. Again, this is something we'll be talking about a little bit more in more detail tomorrow, because this has a big impact on why we had a war called the War of 1812. The embargo failed. Merchants smuggled goods to continue trading with Europe, and the embargo hurt U.S. trade more than it hurt England or France, because they just went to other places. Jefferson had to increase the size of the government and the military to enforce the law. So he went back on some of the things that he tried to do. Jefferson handpicked his successor, James Madison, who won the presidency in 1808 and in 1812. Madison was well qualified, according to Jefferson, of course. He was the architect of the Constitution. He served in Congress and served as Jefferson's Secretary of State. So, clearly he followed right in the footsteps of Thomas Jefferson. As president, Madison tried to continue Jefferson's policies of limited national government. He continued the dominance of the Democratic Republican Party and tried to continue Jefferson's policies of limited national government. But as you get into the War of 1812, it was really hard to do that. So again, this is that chart that has, the Federalist Party lasted 12 years. The Democratic Republican Party had control for 28 years. And then the Democratic Party was founded and was in the White House for 8 years. And then we would eventually see the Republican Party itself come into play a couple decades later. So that's it. Make sure you complete all of your Cornell notes and complete your exit ticket, share with us, and then get that work done for tomorrow. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. I will see you later. Have a good rest of your day.